Hey, my name's Fred McConkey. I'm with the CCIM organization, and I'd like to welcome you to our program for today. It is a industry update for how the various sectors of real estate are holding up, and I'll announce our panelists in just a couple minutes. Um, First thing, I'd like to introduce our president, who is also a panelist. So Kelly Richardson, welcome. And can you tell us a little bit about CCIM and where we're headed this very uncertain year?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome for attending our September CCIM series. And we're really excited about all the opportunities that we have upcoming through 2020 and into 21. While it's definitely a little bit of a different time, we are working hard to making sure that there are opportunities not only for great education, but also for being able to see others in the future. And so please, we've got a webinar coming up on negotiation, and Fred will tell you a little bit more about that. And then we're also working on a timed tour for in the future. So stay tuned. We will see each other in person. It's just a matter of how we're going to do that and comply with everything. Those are some of the things that we have coming up. And we'd love to have you join us on committees and also, if you're not a member, please join our membership. All that information can be found on our website at ccimwa.com. Over to you, Fred.
Very good. Thank you, Kelly. And now I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors. Our sponsors are the people that pay an amount annually, and they help support our organization and get benefits where we funnel business back to these people. So the first one is the Ben Arroyo Company. They've been with us for several years, and they attend many of our meetings. IBA, which is the company that buys and sells businesses. So if you have businesses that go along with your tenants, these people can sell businesses. Ameriprise, a stock brokerage money management firm. And then Sargent Legal. Rob just left the big company, so he is now on his own. And I hear his rates have gone to about 50%. So you might want to check with Rob again now. It doesn't have all that overhead. Also our new sponsors, Great Earth, Larry Yu, we appreciate you being with us. McConkey Development, that's me, and Rowley Properties is Kelly Richardson. Our media sponsors, the Registry and the Daily Journal of Commerce, they help us with our advertising. And our in-kind sponsor is Kelly Beckley. She does all of our marketing. So the next thing I'd like to talk about, we have a strategic negotiation workshop coming on. It's online, September 15th. Patricia Lynn does that. I actually took a class from her 25 years ago, so we've been together quite a long time. And this is a free class, so just dial in Tuesday, September 15th, and you can get a class on negotiations. Also, the Institute is still offering CI 101 through 104, and those are condensed online classes. So if you want to proceed with your designation, it's a good time to do it. You can do it online. And just to check out our website for any further information that you want to know about CCIM.
I cannot do it now. I'm on a call. I'll call it back.
Okay.
No,
So,
yes, I did. Yes, I did it. But
right. So now what I'd like to do is to introduce our speakers, and maybe you can tell us who you are and about yourself. So Kelly, can we start with you, please?
Absolutely. I'm Kelly Richardson. I am the commercial director for Rowley Properties here in Issaquah. We are a family, third generation company. We have about 80 acres here, and we have a development agreement with the city of Issaquah. So we have the ability to build up to 4.4 million square feet on a mixed use development, which will be complete, compact, and connected. We are under construction on a new mixed use office building, which is right on I-90. It is one of the most convenient buildings in order to access. So right off of exit 15. And I am honored also to be the CCIM president and president-elect. So thank you so much for attending. We're really thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you. Larry, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the retail business, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Yu. I'm the managing broker at Greater Realty. This is a boutique brokerage, family run, family owned. And I specialize in retail, leasing, and restaurants, three areas that are most hard hit by COVID-19. And I'm also the 2022 chapter president. I'll be coming in after Kelly. And I also chair the legislature committee and the international committee at the chapter level, and at the institute level, I sit on the international committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. REA with the industrial sector, you want to introduce yourself, please? You're on mute there, REA. There you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Arie Salomon. I'm with NAI-Puget Properties. I've been a CCIM since 1995. And I'm also a past president of the CCIM chapter. I'm with NAI-Puget Properties. We are a commercial real estate company with 3 offices in Seattle, Tacoma, and Bellevue. I specialize in industrial properties, mostly in South King County, Pierce, and Thurston. And I've been doing it since 1990.
Great. Thank you very much, REA. And on my screen, I don't see Candice. So I'm not sure if she has not dialed in yet or not, but
No,
we'll go.
I'm here.
Oh, you are. I'm sorry. Candice, would you please introduce yourself? I've got to enlarge my screen so I have you there. So
there you
go
go.
ahead.
All right. My name is Candice Chevaillier, and I am with Lee & Associates, which is a national company, brokerage company. We have a full service at our brokerage company, including office, industrial, retail, and multifamily. I head up the multifamily team and look forward to sharing some information about what's happening in the multifamily market today. I've been affiliated with CCIM since I believe 2003, and also a local board member for the Commercial Brokers Association and also the Rental Housing Association. So thanks very much for having us.
Very good. Thank you very much, Candice. So we'll get started now, but today's panel is mainly to share information about how other people are doing in this business by different sectors. It's a very uncertain time. We've never been here before. We, hope it blows over, but it's lasted a lot longer than I thought. I remember in the beginning, I gave my tenants 3 months of rent break, and I thought it'd be all over with. We'd be right back to business, but here we are 6 or 7 months later and still pretty screwed up. So anyway, what I'd like to do is, how is your market sector holding up under COVID? You can talk about leasing activity, rate changes, tenants in the market, sale prices, cap rates, things like that. And I think I'll start off with Candice, and can you give us a summary, please?
Absolutely. So, it is an unprecedented time. I think one of the things that is sort of a takeaway for me is, people keep calling this the new normal. And I think that we are not actually in any version of normal yet. And so, it's pretty unprecedented that we would have an economic, a public health, and a political crisis kind of all happening at the same time, but here we are. In terms of multifamily, I mean, the good news is for our region, our employment is still holding fairly strong. We obviously are anchored by some major technology companies here locally who've actually benefited from a lot of the remote work that's happened. And what that's translating into is certain pockets of multifamily really performing quite well. Against the national standards, looking at this crisis, we've been at about 92.1% occupancy and rent payment, and so things have been looking pretty good on a national level. Locally, we're starting to see some cracks in the performance for for rent payment. In fact, there was a recent study that about 17% of residents in Washington State missed their rent payment in July. And, you know, as we look at some of the federal unemployment benefits coupled with local unemployment benefits, I think that did a lot to bolster our occupancy in that short term. And we are starting to see, you know, vacancy rates coming up a bit. We are starting to see concessions in the market, and we are starting to see asking rents decline a bit.
Thank you, Candice. Kelly, we'll go with you next, and Kelly is going to talk about office.
Thank you, Fred. So office has been slow with the shutdown in March and April. There was very little movement. However, in the past month, we are definitely seeing a lot of life out there. I am busier than I ever have been, which is great. But I think it's also dependent on the sector where the office space is located and the tenants. Seattle is really, really lucky because we have, as part of our employment, 20% of employers are in the tech business, very comparable to the Bay Area, and other areas in the nation do not have that benefit. And so the tech companies have really held their own. There has been a little bit of some job cuts, but in general, we're in a lot better position than others in the nation. Now, the overall vacancy rate for Seattle is about 6.6% now. It was about 6% in the beginning of the year, so it has ticked up some. In the past 12 months, we've seen rent growth at about 1.1%. So it's been much slower than it has in the past. There are tenants in the market, tenants such as Indeed.com, Lyft, Uber, Tableau, Oracle. You saw Amazon, they just finalized a lease for 2 million square feet, bringing another 10,000 more jobs into Bellevue for a total of about 25,000 jobs. They leased 555 Tower, which is right where that future light rail station is going to be going, and West Main. So what they're doing here we're very lucky to be able to have such great tenants in the market and great tech tenants. Now we'll see what happens as we move into the future. I think we're going to see some concerns in the airline industry about what will happen in the next 4 months or so. But we are in a better position. We're seeing more prospects happening within the last month. We're seeing more tours happening, and we're seeing more LOIs out there. It's taken a little bit of time to get the deal over the finish line, but we are starting to see that with regards to leasing.
Thank you, Kelly. Arie, we'll go with you next. And I think you're in one of the brighter sectors in industrial. And tell us a little bit about you and your firm, please.
So that's correct. You know, I'm going back to the beginning of the pandemic. I remember on March 23rd, Governor Inslee, initiated a stay-at-home order, and suddenly all activity in our sector completely came to a halt. You know, we were not allowed to show building, we were not allowed to meet, and after an unprecedented increase in rent and activity for the past 10 years, since actually 2010, most brokers did not know how to react because we were not used to it. We were in an industry that was always the darling of the real estate market. Seattle was the #1 place for institutional investors to come and purchase. We stopped marketing properties and putting rate. All properties we brought to market were basically, make your own assumptions. It was a bidding war. And then the pandemic started. And I think that it's the first time that we have seen, after 10 years of steady incline in rent, a shutdown of the industry. So if I compare the industrial market to the other sectors, we're doing extremely well. We have our vacancy is only 5.5%, 5.05% in industrial, but that's about 1% higher than it was in first quarter 2020, which was 4.02. If you're looking at a market of 223 million square feet, an increase of 1%, it's over 2.5 million square feet of added inventory that came to the market. I think the vacancy a little bit is misleading because Amazon, who is on a tear, according to our numbers, they occupy about 5.5 million square feet of properties, of which 2 million square feet was added since the beginning of the year. So if you take Amazon out of the picture, which was 2 million square feet, our vacancy would have been much higher without Amazon taking so much space. If you look at the industrial market, there are two segments. There is the e-commerce segment, which is in an expansion mode. You have Home Depot that signed 1 million square feet last year and in a market for 450,000 square feet. Last Friday, we signed a lease with Lowe's for 1.2 million square feet built to suit in Winlock. Costco signed 220,000 square feet lease in Kent. PepsiCo signed a lease for 200,000 square feet in Auburn. So the big box, the e-commerce are doing extremely well. But the concern that I have is for the brick and mortar, those tenants that cannot pay the rent, don't have the demand for the product like pre-COVID-19, and we are seeing more and more sublease space flooding the market. So because of Amazon, because of the e-commerce, our vacancy is very healthy at 5.05. But if you take those large deals off the market, it's the first time in 10 years that we are seeing a definitely decline in overall velocity for the industrial market.
Very good. Thank you, Arie. I'd also like to remind you that we have a question and answer box, and if it's at the bottom of your screen, and as we go along, if you'd like to ask us questions, we'd be happy to do that. And just also like to mention that all of us on the panel are CCIMs, and we are active in the chapter, and it's a great organization. Now I'd like to introduce Larry, and you can tell us who you are and how the retail and restaurant business is going.
Thank you, Fred. Retail is the sector that is most hard hit by this COVID-19. In terms of retail sales, both at the national level as well as in Seattle, we are seeing a significant decrease in national sales volume. In July, year on year, we have an average decrease of 75% in sales volume at the national level. Sales price decrease is about 8.1% in the second quarter of 2020. Right here in Seattle, the sales volume for retail, we dropped from 560 million in the fourth quarter of 2019 to only $80 million year to date in 2020. So for the first more than half a year, we only have 80 million. That is 15-20% of what we did for the fourth quarter of last year. And tenants in the market, by and large, tenants are requesting rent referrals, and they are also restructuring the lease just to stay open. So what COVID-19 did is fast forwarding a lot of things. It's fast forwarding the demise of the weaker tenants. But on the contrary, we are seeing stronger tenants, stronger retail tenants. They are seeing opportunities in this crisis, and they are using these opportunities to grow and expand. So with that said, in terms of leasing, we are seeing deals being done. In March, April, and May, we were very slow. But since June, July, August, we are seeing leasing activities picking up. We are closing deals. We are still signing LOIs. And so we are seeing deals being done. We are expecting to see vacancy rate go, slightly up, maybe about 1%. Asking rent has not dropped a lot. In second quarter of 2020, we are seeing asking rent drop by between 1% and 5%. We anticipate asking rent in the third quarter and fourth quarter to drop by about 5 to 10%. But what we're seeing is effective rent revenue for the landlord dropping by 12.6% to 14.9% for 2020 year on year. And this is due to landlord giving more concessions to the tenants to stay in the space.
Very good. Thank you, Larry. And I'd just like to mention that I own and manage industrial and office properties. And what I have seen, my office building has gone from 100% occupied to about 33% vacant. I've had my largest tenant give back a half a floor. Another smaller business went out of business. And another group hasn't been there for 6 months. And I think they're going to go to WeWork. So things are really changing. I've noticed that the cities are very slow in their permitting. They're working from home. It just takes forever to get a permit. And in industrial, they're going along pretty good. Most of my tenants asked for a break, and I gave them 3 months deferred rent and added on to the back end of the lease. And we thought everything would be over in 3 months. And then the PPP money came in, and a lot of them were able to pay rent with that. And then since that time, I've had 3 smaller tenants go out of business, and the bigger guys seem to be going okay. And it's just very uncertain with the future. People really don't know what's going to happen. But hopefully during 2021, we have some recovery and things kind of start getting back on track.
Fred, let me add, for the industrial sector, this is the first time in at least 11 years that we have seen a bonus commission offered for brokers. Yeah. And landlord will not offer broker commissions if the market was great. So to see landlord advertising additional commission, Visa, just cash for brokers to bring deals, it shows that there is not enough velocity. And those smart landlords are trying to get a tenant now versus wait another 6 months to a year and still sit vacant on the same space. Also, another indication is the willingness to do shorter term than 7 years to which we were accustomed over the last few years. Until recently, most landlords wanted a minimum of a 5-year term and ideally 10-year term. Now, landlord says, let's just get a tenant even for 2 years just to get income with the hope that the market will recover in 2 years and we can get back to full capacity.
Yes, I've noticed the same thing. I'm usually pay 2.5% to a listing broker and then paying 5% now to the procuring broker. And on a 7-year, 8-year lease, I'm paying 5% all the way through, where it might go to 2.5 after 5 years. And very, very happy to pay a broker for a deal. So
we are offering 5% commission plus $15,000 bonus on top of it, because we want to have the tenant in one building. So, it's good to be a broker now.
Yeah, bribe the broker. But yeah, the deals are kind of hard to come by. Larry, what are you seeing with commissions? Have they been impacted yet?
In retail, we are seeing because of the lease structure, the commission rate is by and large the same. I mean, we have incentive from landlord who try to get us to lease out the space. But when we are trying to be creative with lease restructuring, such as structuring a percentage rent only rent during these difficult times, maybe for 1 or 2 years until we get over it, and some our commission is also affected when we are actually bringing less income to the landlord.
And Larry, are you seeing restaurants, are they kind of picking back up, or if they failed, or what do you see with restaurants?
Restaurants are in a very, very bad shape. We are seeing by and large a lot of restaurants. I mean, right now we are in phase 2, and no in-house dining, and it's only takeout and outdoor dining. So we're helping a lot of restaurants with this position because they want to get out. They want to sell their business. We're helping them renegotiate the rent, renegotiate the lease. So the weaker tenants, tend to be struggling. At the same time, we are seeing a lot of restaurants repivoting. So they are reorganizing how they do their business. So, and you can see, they are being very creative, and a large part of it, 75%, is now takeout business. And with takeout business, if you do it right, your net profits should be about the same because you actually have less expenses because you don't have the in-house front of house staff. So it's actually reduced. So even though, the gross revenue is affected, but the net profit is still hovering, they are still making money for the better restaurants. And a lot of some of these chain restaurants, some of our clients, they are using this opportunity to expand, especially second generation restaurants, because now a lot of second generation restaurants are coming on market. So the stronger tenants are using this opportunity to acquire second generation restaurants. Some landlords are taking back the space fully equipped. So with the full kitchen equipment and everything. And so we seeing activities in the leasing market.
Great. Thank you, Larry. I'll move to Candice next, and just a couple of things. How is leasing in multifamily, sales, cap rates in multifamily? And then we have our first question that came in. How much are the rioters and looters affecting your markets in Washington or Seattle specifically? So Candice, you're Seattle multifamily. Go ahead.
Can you imagine that question in 2019? I definitely look back at sort of, we have our current situation and the questions that people ask. And then I think how crazy we would have sounded a year ago asking these same questions. We're talking about pandemics and all of this. So with regard to leasing, I alluded to that kind of in the introduction. We are seeing some challenges in specific sectors of leasing. So, I don't love to talk about kind of a national real estate market as an example, because it is a very locally driven market. Any real estate market is. And so now we're looking very much even at the micro market and the buildings themselves as it relates to what is the tenant mix, who are they working for, and that can tell us a lot about how well that building will perform, has been performing, and will perform. So for example, student housing, the university district, those are some areas that obviously have been impacted by all of the remote learning, and so we are starting to see higher vacancy rates than usual in that particular pocket. Kind of alluding to the riots and looters, the urban core has really been suffering. I mean, a year ago, being downtown Seattle with the vibrant restaurant scene and entertainment and retail, because that was such a draw to downtown, that's why people wanted to be downtown. And now with much of that activity quieted down, and with some of the unrest, we're seeing people really looking outside of that urban core for housing. They are not necessarily, if they're working from home, they don't necessarily need to be in the office, and they can consider maybe a lifestyle choice, seeking tertiary markets where rents are lower and there's less crime. And so we are starting to see that impact on particular markets. Senior housing is another one that's really been hit hard because obviously living close together in close quarters right now is not something that people want to do. Low income housing is another sector that's really being impacted. Those are, many of the tenants might be in that hourly wage, entertainment, service industry jobs, and we talked about all these other factors with office, industrial, and retail, and the stronger tenants are doing well and the weaker tenants are suffering. And when I hear those things, I'm thinking about the tenants that are employed by those companies, right? So, the restaurant scene has been able to cobble together takeout, has been very creative as it relates to outdoor dining and things like that. But, come mid-October, we all know the rain's going to come, and going to an indoor restaurant from a health standpoint, it still has some big question marks. So I think, when we look back at the initial pandemic and the effects, there was sort of this, okay, this is a moment in time. This is 3 months, like Fred, you were talking about. Okay, we just need to get through this 3-month period. And as we started to open up again, things were actually looking pretty promising. I think the real challenge is that reversion of infection rates and how we're going to notice that effect long-term in our economy. So those are some of the things that have really impacted our market. As it relates to sale prices and volume, we are down. If we look, at sort of King County, we're down about 77% over 2019. Sorry, that's Tri-County. If we look just at King County, that's about 72% down from a volume standpoint. This is first half of the year to the first half of this year, 2019 to 2020. Snohomish was down about 92% in terms of velocity, and Pierce was down about 81% from a velocity standpoint. Now, we have seen some recent sales, larger deals that have been happening, but if you read between the lines, those are select sellers. There were 3 huge deals that were announced last week. Well, it was all the same seller, and their objective is to move further away from some of the challenges that we're seeing from a regulatory standpoint in Washington State. So investors that are interested in the Seattle area are watching the regulatory environment very closely, both for Washington State and for the city of Seattle. I did look also at kind of price per unit and price per square foot to start to assess what's happening with value. I think there's a huge conversation with that. But in terms of, value from the first part of 2019 to this first part of 2020, the first half, we didn't see that much of a change in value, but I don't think the fundamentals are going to be getting better. As I mentioned, that sort of initial thought, and now we're seeing sort of that second wave. So I do expect things to degrade further over the next, call it 6 months to a year from a value standpoint. But if we look this year to last year, not too much of an impact. Obviously a huge run up in value towards the end of 2019 with the change in the excise tax structure. We saw that in all product types. But now with the uncertainty and protests and those kinds of things, buyers are very much watching what's going on. We also have an upcoming election, and that's creating some pause. So I would say there's a lot of price discovery happening right now as well. And so we're watching all of these things very closely. Back to, if you have a well-located property that has maintained occupancy and hasn't been hugely affected, you could make the case that maybe your value hasn't been hugely affected. But if you are starting to see impacts on value, then or impacts on the operations, that's going to translate to impacts on value. So there's just some thoughts.
Thank you, Candice. Yeah, really different times. We have one question, Arie. There's a gentleman looking for 30,000 feet of warehouse on I-405, so I'll send you that request and maybe can help him out. And then another person said we're seeing an increase in business for options to escape California. And I have some personal experience with that a lot of people are moving to their vacation homes or just flat moving out of the cities. We have a ranch in Montana that we had for sale last year for 15 months and never got a single offer, 2 showings. And then we relisted it during COVID thinking that it'd be terrible. And we had 4 full price offers and it's in escrow. Hard to figure that one out. And then we bought a place in Sun Valley. We bought it the first day it was on the market, and that market is going wide open, no inventory. So you're kind of seeing a bit of a split between the haves and the have-nots. And then there's a lot of unemployed waiters and people that are really having a tough time, and other people just getting out of the city. So very different time. Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing to make money these days, and how do you generate office activity, and then you're managing properties also? So what are you doing to make things happen?
Sure. So a lot of folks have been on the sidelines trying to figure out how much space do they actually need. Gone are the days of needing 150 square feet per person per employee. So now you're looking at least 250 to 300 square feet per person. And so people are trying to really figure out, well, what does it mean how much space do they really need? And that's a lot of the struggles that are out there, in addition to what's happening with the pandemic. And as people look at that and figure that out, I don't think our office space is not gone. I don't know how you folks feel, but I would rather be at the office than working from home. The opportunities with collaboration and with other folks, those will happen, and it will happen again. It's just a matter of time. You're seeing medical doing very well, and you're seeing, and then you're seeing tech as well. So we have benefited by that. Where a lot of the activity is happening right now is subleasing. There's about a total of about 3 million square feet of subleased space on the market, with about 1.9 million of that being in Seattle. So Seattle has had a tough time. How are you going to get into your high rise in Seattle? How long is the wait going to be to get into the elevator, right? So you're seeing some of the companies wanting to move out of Seattle and come to the east side. So co-working continues to give space back, and that's a bit of a different animal for a landlord. Right now, we are seeing an unprecedented amount of activity in our area. I think because people really want to be out here, and it's an opportunity for folks to have that good quality of life. So we're seeing great cap rates, low cap rates for multifamily out here, and that is also bringing folks in from Seattle and even Bellevue, because we do have lower rents per square foot. So that's what's happening with that. And Fred, was there anything else that you would like me to answer on that?
Well, we just had another question come in. It says, what roles are local government politics and processes playing in Seattle versus East Side markets? Do you foresee voters responding to make corrections at this local level? And that's from Larry Ingram of CCIM in Linwood. And I'd like to remind you that please use the Q&A box rather than chat box, and we can get your questions that way. And we have 64 people watching. So Kelly, do you want to tell us a little bit about Seattle versus East Side and office?
Well, I think if you really truly understand, let's just take the protests and the Seattle Police Department. If you really understand the social equity programs that the police department put in place prior to all this, it was impressive. And I don't think that I think that there needs to be education about the programs that they have in place. And then if there is something missing, needing to put that in. I was sorry to see the city council make their determination in Seattle about defunding the police. And as an office user, you want to be safe. And so I have seen, because of that, and as well as some of the things with the head tax, I've seen users come from Seattle out into the other areas. And I just think it's it's something, it's an education. We all want to help everybody. We all want everybody to do well. And I'm sorry to see some of the decisions that were made. And I think it's an education on how do we get there? How do we help everybody? And our job base is huge because jobs give us that sense of pride. And through that sense of pride, we're able to go out and help other people. And it uplifts everybody. And so it really needs, jobs are really important. And I think we have some more education about how to get there, particularly with the city of Seattle.
Thank you,
The city
Kelly.
of Bellevue has done very well. In fact, they've hired some city of they've hired some city of Seattle police force.
Very good, thank you. Arie, there's a question that came in, which way are industrial lease rates heading, up, down, or flat? That's a question from Morgan, one of our CCIM friends.
Well, it's a great question, and the answer is depends, meaning depend on the size of the transaction. If you're talking about 200,000 square feet or larger, rent are still very strong. If you're looking at 20 to 30 or 40,000 square feet, when you have 25 options to choose from, rent are stagnant or even up to 5% lower. What we see more is additional in the free rent. Before that, it was common to expect 1 month of free rent on a 5-year term. Now we are willing to get 3 months, maybe even 4 months for the right deal. So it's not necessarily a reduction in rent, it's different terms that landlord is willing to consider that before, or a shorter term, which before that was a much longer term. Overall, our investment market is very strong. There is more demand than supply. On the leasing side, there are some properties that are doing extremely well, like in Seattle, Prologis leased 280,000 square feet to Dairy Gold. Next to it, and they've leased an 8-acre site to King County Metrobus. Then you go to in Lacey, the state of Washington took 200,000 square feet for the PPP program. And IKEA took 200,000 square feet in Frederickson as a supplement. So those are still strong deals, but the majority of the 10 to 25,000 square feet, there is softens and up to 5% discount.
Yeah, thank you, Arie. What I have personally seen is concessions increasing, where I had a tenant looking at the market all the way up to 7 months of free rent for a 5-year lease. And then they came back and decided they would just do a 2-year lease. And now they're not sure they're going to do anything. So it's pretty hard to get people to lease space that they can't occupy. So Larry, can you tell us a little bit about rates in your business, please?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. So in retail, the rates that we are seeing, rent leasing rates, we are seeing reductions because there are empty spaces that landlord is trying to get leased out, and we are all being very creative in how to structure this lease. Negotiations are tougher because tenants are seeking discount. They are more cautious in the deals. So we are being very creative and thinking of how we can get the deals done. Anything from reduced rent rate to more rent-free months to using percentage rent. So that contributed to the landlord's effective rent revenue dropping. But by and large, the asking rent at this point is still largely intact. But the lease rate that we are listing out, we are actually seeing a reduction of the rates that in the lease that we are signing.
Thank you, Larry. Candice, I'll ask you next. First of all, you're a very successful broker, and how do you make more business happen? How do you make money these days? And then tell us a little bit about rental payments in Seattle, where it seems to be almost optional to pay your rent to an apartment these days.
Oh boy, that's a good topic. Well, I can tell you what to do. Double your calls. And I mean, I do think that throughout this time, our clients really do want to talk about the market and what's going on. And I think that's one of the things that our team has really focused on, is actually outreach. As things were developing, then through kind of the stay-at-home order, and also now as it's kind of continuing on, people really do want to talk, and they want to understand what's happening with value, what's happening with their investments, where the future is. And as it relates to, this shift from, urbanism to suburbanism has huge impacts. And Kelly's talked about how, Bellevue and Issaquah and some of these markets have really benefited. And when we look at multifamily, there are a lot of investors on the sidelines right now. And, residential, we were talking about residential kind of before this call, how people are really reconfiguring their lives right now. They're making big decisions on where they want to be, how much they're willing to commute, all of these different pieces. I do question how long that will be the case. There is an absolute argument for why offices exist, why cities exist, why you need density, why you need people together to collaborate in the creative process. And you hear a lot of the tech companies understanding that right now we have this work from home component, but you cannot have innovation without collaboration. And so those are some of the things that I'm watching, because what we do is sell apartment buildings or commercial real estate in the case of the entire panel. And we are not looking at investments that are a 6 to 12 month window, right? We're looking at these long-term shifts. Our clients own property from, call it 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 to 30 years. And so given that there's a lot happening in the right now, but really looking at what is the future of the region, what are the actual shifts that we think will go on for a long time, and what is more of a pendulum swing. So that's what we're talking with our clients about. And like I said, we are absolutely out there. We've been sending out kind of weekly updates to our clients on key news. And some of the news that's been very prescient is obviously the housing policy has been shifting. So, it's always a big topic, but we had a Seattle eviction ban, we had a statewide eviction ban. Now, apparently the CDC and the president are getting into housing policy. I certainly have some opinions on what these policies really do to affordability. So if the objective is affordability, I think we're implementing some of the wrong strategies. But it is absolutely a part of the environment right now. Again, kind of going back to the unrest, the protests, and the eviction bans, there's a lot of headwinds to simply running an apartment building as an owner right now. So whereas providing housing, I think, is a very noble pursuit. Certainly the narrative is that that the landlord's the bad guy. And so working through that and seeing how that plays out within the media and within local government, I don't think the direction of this regulatory oversight is really going to be changing. And I think people need to be ready for that. So, our region was talking about rent control over the last couple of legislative sessions, and it didn't get much traction last February, but it was expected to get more traction this February. And there's a case, people think that there's a case to be made that it's even more important now, given the pandemic. So unfortunately, we're using legislation to legislate in the time of a pandemic, whereas really helping tenants through federal unemployment dollars, those kinds of programs that help the tenants just maintain their commitments to their landlords, in turn helps the landlords maintain their commitments to the bank and all the way up. So really, you know, what I've seen with landlords, the ones that have been successful through this so far, have really been communicative with their tenants, working with them both on the multifamily side, but also on, you know, office, industrial, and retail, is being communicative, figuring out how to help, coming up with payment plans, bill and extend, you know, all these different concepts that that can help the tenant stay in place and obviously continue the income stream on the property for the landlord. So that's a lot to go over, but certainly the legislative and regulatory environment in Seattle is encouraging investment outside of Seattle. And we're seeing that on repeat, but there are also investors that see this as an opportunity. And I think that's the lesson for all of us is when you see these big shifts, it does create opportunity. And, you know, I can tell you that the choice for purchasing great, well-located properties in excellent locations, good stock of inventory right now, you have more choice as a buyer than you might have in the past. And so to that end, we're also making sure that we're in contact with groups that want to be opportunistic within this time of COVID. And I think that's another part of it is there's a seller side and a buyer side. So maybe there's a little bit more buyer side opportunity than there has been in the past.
Thank you, Candice.
Yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes. So there was another question that came in. How are lenders responding to this changed market? And then we'll go around and kind of finish up with where do you see the market in 6 months and where do you see it in a year? So kind of your crystal ball. In terms of lenders, at least from my experience, when the pandemic hit, I was in the middle of a refinance with one of the big 4 banks. And they basically pulled out of the market. That deal didn't happen. They didn't honor the rate lock that they had. I went to this big bank for PPP money and they were out of that money within 3 days. And then I was looking for a home equity loan and they had a ban on home equity loans. So I went to a local bank that's fairly big in the state of Washington and I got all those things done and they were very happy to do it. So that was my personal experience with lenders, which was not real great with the big guys. And then we'll ask what you think your crystal ball is. So Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about lending if you're in the financing market, and then where do you see the office market in the next 6 months to a year?
Sure. So VC capital dried up very early on. And so a lot of the folks who relied on that, unfortunately, were no longer able to continue. We did see a lot with the PPP money with local community banks being successful. The large national banks, if you didn't fill out the paperwork with a check mark, if you didn't fill out the check mark, you were just looked over. And so the folks who were successful getting the money were with the smaller, the community banks who they had a relationship with. And these folks, these lenders worked 24 hours a day on the weekends. It was crazy time in order to get these transactions completed. Now, as you're moving forward with lending, it is a changed area. Lenders are scrutinizing the transaction much more than they ever have. The amount of paperwork involved in a transaction right now is it's just unbelievable. So, but that being said, I mean, there are still sales volume happening in the office market. From what we did last year, it's about, this past year, it's been about 20%, well, maybe 75% down, but we're still seeing particularly private equity firms such as KKR. They purchased Expedia's former headquarters, which is now fully leased by Amazon. And you've also seen some opportunities for redevelopment with this. Ryan Companies and Hal Real Estate, they teamed up and they paid about $46 million for the former Farmers Insurance campus on Mercer Island. Now that property is within walking distance to the future Mercer Island's future light rail. So they're kind of banking on, well, what's going to be ahead of it? Let's take this opportunity now for this asset. Costco in this area has been purchasing various surrounding properties for them, and normally they just let those properties sit until they need them, but they've taken the old leather store and now they're converting that into office so that they can have a place to put some of their employees in the meantime. So where I'm definitely seeing that there is a slowdown, and that slowdown will be happening for at least 6 months. But there's also a lot of really good things out there that, given the amount of volume that I'm seeing right now in the leasing activity, they're very good indicators. Office folks in office still is paying the rent. It's not what we thought. There's ideas that you're going to get a great deal out there. It might be better than the pandemic, but it's not going to be. You're not going to find what some of the calls that I get are. But so I think that there's a lot of good things in this area. We're very lucky to be here, and stay tuned because office will be coming back.
Thank you. Arie, could you comment a bit on lending, if you're seeing any mortgages transactions, and then where do you see the industrial market in 6 months to a year?
Yeah, regarding lending, I don't really deal with that because most of my clients are institutional clients, and they buy cash and later put debt on the property. But with interest rates so low, we still see a very strong demand for investment in our market. What I can say about a year from now is I expect the market to be flat for about a year. I don't think it's going to go down, but I don't see it expanding because I think all the people that are getting unemployment now, I'm concerned about the effect of the market for the next year. But at the same time, there is enough speculative development by developer and institution that they believe that a year from now, or a year and a half from now, when the project will be ready, they expect the market to come back. We have a 10-acre site under contract just south of SeaTac International Airport. We received over 10 offers on the property. And it's gonna take a year and a half to get this completed, and the price was pretty high. It shows that they believe that over the long term, Seattle is a great place to invest, to live, and to do business. It might be slow or flat for the next 12 months, but beyond that, I expect a very strong recovery for the industrial market.
Thank you very much, Arie. And I think we'll just probably wrap up with Larry. Can you tell us a little bit about lending, if you're seeing any changes there, and then where do you see restaurants and retail 6 months to a year from now?
Okay, Fred. In terms of lending, lenders are very, very cautious, doing deals in retail and restaurants. They wouldn't even touch restaurants. They wouldn't touch anything that is even remotely linked to a restaurant owner. And even though the borrower is very strong financially, just last week. We had a strong client, a restaurant client who's trying to buy a warehouse. And this client, even though we proved to the lender that, this guy is very financially strong, is in his profit and loss statement, even during the worst of COVID-19, he's seeing a 25% net profit. So you hardly see this, so it's a very strong client. And we wouldn't get past underwriter, so none of the banks would touch a restaurant client, even though they are doing very well. So it's just like hands off. Where do we see retail? We are looking at recovery, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Definitely not 2021 kind of time frame. and things are still so fluid. Like what we always say, what we predict on Tuesday sometimes doesn't happen on Thursday. It's no longer valid on Thursday. So things are very fluid now. So the first hurdle right now is we want to see what happens in November. I think that could give us some clarity into next year. And we're really keeping our fingers crossed. What will happen next year and beyond.
Thank you, Larry. Well, it is 1 o'clock West Coast time, but we have one more question for Candice, and see if you can answer this one. It says, can you speak to investor underwriting and approach to multifamily NOI? Specifically, are you hearing investors actually haircutting in-place rents as evidence mounts that rent growth will be moving negative? And are they using higher cap rates in determining value?
Good question. We are seeing less of a rent growth story over the next, call it 18 months. So often investors would buy off on a lower, call it sub 4 cap range, because they could see a path to a 5 cap. Now what we're seeing is the desire to maybe be in the, and this is kind of in city cap rate averages. So they average a little bit lower than typically outside of Seattle. That's typically because now we're starting to see that, in Issaquah and East Side are starting to really, the cap rates are quite aggressive in those markets due to demand. So the rent story, I think, is for the next 18 months. I've kind of keep mentioning 18 months, and it's because I keep looking at what's happening with development. And we are still at the end of a huge delivery cycle for apartments. And in particular, they're in the urban markets like downtown Seattle and in the University District and some of these areas that were mobilizing for all of this new lease ups. And so if you're in lease up right now, you're competing, you're adding a lot of concessions to your balance sheet, unfortunately, to the net operating income. So what we're seeing then going forward is a burn off of those new units that should end kind of in 2021 as we get to the end of all of those deliveries, assuming they aren't delayed further into 2022. So 2022, 2023, I think are going to be great years to come out of the ground with, to be in lease up at that stage. And we are seeing investors making their bets today on land development. So from that standpoint, that's positive. And again, it's because we're in an investment market. We're not making changes every 2-3 months. These are year-long, multiple year-long ownership cycles or development cycles. And developing in the city of Seattle has become so difficult, and prices are currently so high. It's really, it speaks to future rent growth potential for our market. And so while I do see rents coming down in the short term, call it over the next, through the end of next year, we will start to see rent growth in that 2022, 2023 time period. So when you're looking at a current cap rate, I would look to, satisfy kind of a minimum bar over this next period of time, but be putting your chips in the places that you want to own in that next cycle. Because we do, again, long-term for the city of Seattle, for the Puget Sound region, is very strong. We have talent here that not every market has. We have air most of the time. We have water. I mean, these are things that you can't just create in a market, and these are things that we benefit from here locally. So I would say, having a measured expectations of financial performance of buildings for the next 18 months is prudent, and get ready for that and have those cash reserves on hand. But I do think the sky's clearing quite a bit come 2022, 2023.
Very good. Thank you very much, Candice. I think we're going to wrap things up now. We've had about 60 people watching today, and we certainly appreciate that. Stay current with CCIMWA.com, and we have programs like this. We have education and classes, and we have the free negotiating class coming up. So that's all we have for today. We'll be back in October with prop tech and telling you more about technology in the lending market. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Fred.
Bye.
Bye-bye.